Hi there, and welcome to the Mindful Breastfeeding podcast and show. I'm Anna Grange, and this is a bit of an introductory episode just to let you in on the Mindful Breastfeeding School, what we do, what we're all about, and also what you can expect from listening to this podcast and or joining us on the YouTube channel. So, what qualifies me to be able to talk about this stuff, other than the fact that I'm absolutely 100% passionate about supporting infant feeding in a different way. Well, I'm a lactation consultant. I qualified as a lactation consultant in 2015, but I've been working with new parents for much longer than that. I've been a paediatric nurse since 2000, but even before I started my nurse training in 97, I was working as a nanny, as childminder, as an au pair with new families, helping them with their babies in that early parenting experience that they were having. And it's an area that I just absolutely love working in. I truly believe that people need help and support in that time in their lives, and especially in our culture where we tend to live in quite nuclear style families. It's really important that no matter what our society tells us we should be capable of, particularly as women, that we do recognise that when we're bringing up a baby, actually we do need help and support, and at the very least companionship. And I became a peer supporter after my second child. I've got 3 children. They're quite big now. They're 14, 12 and 8. And when I became a peer supporter, I just started, again, supporting people in the community, but specifically with breastfeeding. I had a very tricky experience then with my daughter feeding her, and I started to realise how much of an impact my emotions and my well-being was having on our parenting, on our infant feeding journey, but also on my parenting journey with her. And it really made me realise that when I became an IBCLC, I wanted to put that aspect, the emotional side of supporting families and of this experience, the emotional side of the experience they were having, I wanted to put that at the heart of what I was doing, because I felt it was really important, and I felt that it wasn't being focused on enough. What I recognise is that people who work in the infant feeding support space do amazing listening. They create space. They have this incredible environment where families are able to talk about what's gone on for them, whether it's with their birth or whether it's going on for feeding. A big part of most breastfeeding support training is those essential counselling skills, and they make such a huge difference to the emotional well-being of those families. They really do. But what I wanted to do was to kind of extend that and actually create some tools and experiences, things that parents could do themselves to really promote their emotional well-being in a time when actually naturally their focus was very much on their baby and not on themselves. But I come from the belief that actually both things are important. So in this podcast, my hope for you is that you start to see infant feeding in a different way, in a different light, and see infant feeding support in a slightly different way as well. That's not to, put down the practical aspects of supporting feeding or the listening and counselling side of it as well, but just to add something to create a more holistic experience for any of us, whether you're a parent that's breastfeeding or whether you are somebody who's supporting others. I want to show you a different way of thinking about this. And actually, if you're a parent listening to this, my intention for you is very much to add self-compassion to your journey and to your experience, alongside understanding, breastfeeding, chest feeding, infant feeding in a deeper way, but also being able to know how to get help, when to get help. And I've got a whole myriad of guests coming on to talk about their specialisms, whether that is in infant feeding itself, parenting, birth, or in the world of well-being. If you're a practitioner, I really hope that this podcast and show inspires you to look at infant feeding a little bit differently, and perhaps consider prioritising other aspects of the care you're giving, the ones that actually help calm the nervous system, which in turn leads parents and babies to have a closer connection and helps them navigate their own experience. And I thought it'd be really good on this episode to explain a little bit about what I mean by that. Because it's such a simple concept, actually, mindful breastfeeding. And also, I should just say, this stuff works for anybody. I have put it with breastfeeding because that's the area I work in, and I'll explain physiologically in a moment why it makes such a big difference. But of course, I support people who prefer to use the language chest feeding, and I also absolutely support families who have chosen to bottle feed their baby or feed their baby in another way, or perhaps it's even not through choice, which for many people it isn't. They have just not felt able to carry on. Actually, mindful breastfeeding has something for everybody. So I really hope that you feel that when you hear me and my guests talking. So the key to mindful breastfeeding really is about calming the nervous system. So I want to talk about the nervous system in a very kind of crude manner. There are lots of other really fascinating, interesting theories and ways of looking at it, but I'm going to talk about it in a very clear system. I'm going to talk specifically about our autonomic nervous system. Our autonomic nervous system is the part of our nervous system that is automatic. That's where the autonomic words come from. It's the way our body keeps us safe and our mind together. Our mind and body, they're really one, they're interacting. We very much think about them separate, but they're not. Our body is constantly adapting and changing. It's called homeostasis, and it's keeping us well and it's keeping us safe. It's keeping us safe. And it's got these automatic systems in place to be able to do that. And with the autonomic nervous system, what it does is it puts us into a stressed state to help keep us safe. So we would sometimes call this our fight, flight or freeze state. And we need it. We need that system to keep us safe. Often people who work in this field, we use the example of, if back in the day, as we evolved into human beings, if a predator was around when we were hunter-gatherers, and we saw a bear, let's say, for example, and it's our body's automatic response that puts in all these physiological changes to enable us to survive. So we call it fight, flight or freeze because we might be ready to fight. Might not fight a bear, but you might find, actually the other day I saw this fascinating episode on this morning actually about two sisters, and one twin wrestled a crocodile off her sister that was attacking her. So actually maybe we would fight a bear in the right circumstances. But that woman, she didn't think about that. It was automatic. Something automatic helped, inside of her meant that she was going to react to save her twin. And that is that kind of fight element coming in. And our body puts in quite a lot of physiological changes to do that. So it increases our heart rate, increases our breathing rate. It increases... it sends blood, oxygen to our muscles, so we're ready to fight, we're ready to run. It opens up our pupils so that we can see where we need to go and we can run to safety. Or sometimes we might freeze. And actually, different theories sometimes put the freeze element of fight, flight, freeze into a sort of different area of the nervous system, but that's not what this episode's about. As I said, this is a very crude example of the autonomic nervous system. So another example that we might use now, because how often do we really come across a bear or a crocodile for that matter? So if you were just about to step out into the road and you hadn't heard a car coming, but then you suddenly see it, you don't have to think, I must just put my foot backwards so that I can jump out of the way, and we don't think that. Our body automatically does it. That is our autonomic nervous system, our fight, flight, freeze, working at its best to keep us safe. The problem comes in is that with our brains, our brains can't tell what's real and what isn't real. And one of the ways we know that is true is if you think about when you last had a nightmare, or when you've ever had a nightmare as a child, and that you can wake up, with our heart beating fast, feeling panicked, your body's perhaps sweating, or perhaps you're cold and clammy. That's not a real thing. That's something that was imagined in your brain by your subconscious while you were sleeping. But physiologically, your body put in everything it needed at that moment to potentially keep you safe. Now, what can happen in our modern world when we tend to be more chronically stressed, when we have more anxiety than ever, when we're worrying about the future or, feeling like we're not getting things right, we can be in that fight, flight and freeze mode too much. And you might think, well, what does that matter? We need that mode. It's part of our nature. It's part of our physiology. Does it really matter? But what we know and what modern science shows us, when we are in that stressed state, that fight, flight, freeze state too much, our body doesn't physiologically work as it should do. So the system that we're supposed to be in most of the time, our default system, we might call our rest and digest. That's also our autonomic nervous system. And when we're in our rest and digest system and not in our fight, flight, freeze, our body is working well. The reason it's called rest and digest is because when blood isn't being sent to those let's call them the emergency part of our body, so like our muscles or our heart or our lungs, everything's flowing normally. And one area that is kind of slowed down or almost stopped in fight, flight, freeze is the gut. And again, modern science is showing us more and more how important our gut is, because we know that the microbiome of our gut and our gut, the communication aspect between our gut and our brain and the rest of our body is becoming more and more apparent how important that is in our health. So if when we're stressed, our gut slows down and doesn't work properly, that can really impact us. Science is also showing us that being chronically stressed, not having enough relaxation in our lives, actually impacts our body on a cellular level. And they're looking at really molecular studies, looking at things like genes, genetics, our chromosomes, and how even with the individual chromosomes, being stressed has a negative impact on those very tiny, minuscule molecules that are in the middle of our nucleus of our cells that make us who we are. So this stuff has a really big impact on how we feel, how we think, on our emotions, but also physiologically is having an impact on our body. And that's where the breastfeeding aspect comes in. So, of course, we all know, don't we, that when we're more relaxed, we connect more with the people we love, with our partners, with our babies. When we're more relaxed, we live more in the moment. We enjoy life more often. And, mindfulness tells us that. And we know lots about that. And that's one of the reasons why so many people enjoy mindfulness, meditation, including relaxation in their lives. But when it comes to breastfeeding or chest feeding or human lactation, there's this extra element that makes a huge difference as well. And that's because when we're in that fight, flight, freeze mode, it's not just the gut that isn't functioning well, it's other parts of the body too. And actually we know that oxytocin doesn't really flow very well in that state. And oxytocin is the hormone that squeezes breast milk from our milk making cells down the milk ducts to the nipple to the baby. So if oxytocin's not flowing well, the milk doesn't let down as easily, and that can become problematic for breastfeeding. And we're going to have more episodes on this where I'll go into this in a lot more detail for you, but that is really the crux of mindful breastfeeding. Yes, it's about how you feel. It's about being compassionate to yourself. It's about taking time out for yourself as a new parent. It's about connecting with your baby, connecting with yourself so that you can start to follow your own path in the age of information overwhelm. But it's actually also about the physiology of your body and how, when we are relaxed, our body works better, and that includes making milk for our babies. And that's the key to it, really. And I think when I put together the emotional wellbeing tools for the Mindful Breastfeeding School, I actually put them together with thinking about preparing for breastfeeding. And it was really aimed at antenatal classes. But as I started to use them more, not just for myself, but also for the people I was supporting as a lactation consultant, I was really blown away at the huge difference they made to everybody. Not just people who were, breastfeeding was going quite well, but perhaps they were quite stressed or anxious, and we put in some calming measures. That didn't really surprise me. It was when I started using them with people who having a really, really, really tough, challenging time with breastfeeding. Perhaps they'd even stopped. Perhaps they were on the cusp and feeling like, I'm not sure how much longer I can carry on with this. This is really hard, and we haven't found a solution that's working quite yet. Mindful breastfeeding makes such a huge difference for those people. Relaxation techniques, journaling, picking apart how they're feeling about things, using breath work. All of these things are very, very simple, but make a huge impact for everybody who uses them and is open to using them. So that's really, in a nutshell, what mindful breastfeeding is. That's what we do at the Mindful Breastfeeding School. And that's really the central theme for this podcast and the YouTube channel. So if this stuff interests you, if you feel inspired by what I'm talking about, if it kind of is piecing together some of the stuff you're seeing in practice as a practitioner, or perhaps as a parent yourself, then please do continue to tune in. We've got some really exciting guests coming up over the next few months. And I'm just really excited to talk to you more about this stuff and to be able to have a platform where I can share this with as many people as possible. So on that note, please do subscribe to the podcast, whether you are listening on Spotify or on Apple Podcasts. And please do share. And if you can, write a review as well, because that does make a difference to us, and it means that more people get to listen and learn to the Mindful Breastfeeding podcast. Okay, that is it for this episode. Thank you so much for listening, and I will speak to you again soon. Bye. Thank you so much for watching. I really appreciate your spending your time here. If you'd like to know more, a good place to start would be with the Mindful Breastfeeding book. It's available from Amazon around the world, and it's a short interactive guide to mindful breastfeeding with journaling and guided relaxations and just more talk on the importance of having a calm and connected infant feeding experience. You can find our website at www.mindfulbreastfeedingschool.com. The link is below, and on there you'll get access to our practitioners directory. So if you as a parent and you'd like to work with somebody who's trained in mindful breastfeeding skills, as well as all the practical skills as well, to be able to help you on your infant feeding journey, then you will find someone you can work with there. They also run classes as well as one-to-one sessions, so go and have a look around. And you can find access to our courses. So if you are somebody who would like to add mindful breastfeeding to your practice, then please do come and find our courses. We've got free training on there for professionals and birth workers, as well as access to be able to talk to me. So do leave me messages, do get in touch on social media. All the links are below. I look forward to hearing from you.